The Brutal Hit, Episode 3. The Brutal Hit. Capture Provost Prison in the heaviest price. What's up, you magnificent bastards? Welcome back to the Masonic Files, where we shove aside the dusty portraits, ignore the polished statues, and get straight into the brothers who actually yank the square and compasses off the altar, stuff them in a back pocket like everyday tools, and use them to measure real empires, chisel through real pain, and help build something louder than royal bullshit. No incense, no fairy tales, just stone dust, blood, contradictions, and the occasional savage choice when the crown decided to play hardball. This is episode 3 of our 4-part deep dive into Brother Richard Stockton, the tall, green-eyed Princeton lawyer and first New Jerseyman to sign the Declaration of Independence. In episode 1, we watched the privileged Ashlar take shape on family lands bought from William Penn, the sharp legal mind forged under David Ogden, the royal appointments, and the quiet founding of St. John's Lodge No. 1, where he became its first worshipful master. The square guided his early rise. The chisel sharpened the athletic son of privilege. In episode 2, we rode the deliberate flip. Resignation of comfortable royal posts as British policy squeezed tighter. Election to Congress. The solemn signing on August 2nd as New Jersey's first. The muddy inspection mission to Ticonderoga with George Clymer, where barefoot soldiers haunted every report, and turning down offers of governorship and chief justice to stay in the bigger fight. The compasses started bounding old loyalties. The plumb kept him upright, and the level bridged his elite world with the patriot cause. And all the while, the British have been paying attention and taking notes on Stockton. Now the bill comes due for Stockton, and it arrives with interest. Harder and more personal than almost any other signer paid. British forces storm through New Jersey. They drag him from bed in the dead of night, march him through freezing cold, and toss him into the hell of Provost Prison. Irons, starvation, scurvy. Deliberate cruelty aimed at breaking a man whose name sat on that declaration. We're sitting with every brutal detail. The nighttime capture. The prison darkness. The parole controversy that still stains his name. The looting of Morven. And the shattering cost to body, family, and reputation. No hero gloss. Just the raw human wreckage when principle meets empire. Let's pick up the story in late 1776, right after the Northern Mission, because this is where the working tools stop feeling like metaphors and start getting hammered in the dark. By November of 1776, the war had turned ugly fast. Washington's army was in full retreat across New Jersey. British General William Howe and Lord Cornwallis had taken New York and were driving south like they owned the continent, which, to be fair, they still mostly did on paper. Morale sat in the gutter. Many colonists figured the rebellion was about to get crushed under redcoat boots. Stockton, fresh from Congress and that punishing northern ride, sensed the danger closing in on his family. He left Philadelphia in a hurry and raced home to Morven. Annis met him with the practical fire that defined her. The 6 children, Julia the twins, Mary and Susan, John Richard, Lucius Horatio, and little Abigail, needed to move. They packed what they could carry in haste. Some clothes, important papers, whatever silver and valuables fit into saddlebags and wagons. The elegant Georgian house that had hosted dignitaries held Annis's growing library and echoed with poetry and laughter, now stood vulnerable right on the King's Highway. They fled 30 miles east to the country estate of Stockton's friend John Covenhoven in Monmouth County, hoping distance and obscurity would buy safety. It didn't. I've mentioned before that the American Revolution was counterinsurgency operations before we called them that. And like any coin ops, rivalries, divided loyalties, and old scores to settle. Our intelligence to be leveraged against the local fighters. Just as today, everyone keeps score when you act against them and their interests. Loyalist neighbors, men who knew Stockton's habits, his movements, exactly where he would run, sold the information to the British without hesitation, like the cunts they are. On the night of November 30th, 1776, British forces and Loyalist militiamen stormed the Covenhoven home. They burst through doors in the dark, lanterns swinging, boots loud on the floorboards. Stockton was dragged from bed still in his nightshirt and breeches. No time to dress properly, no chance to grab a weapon or papers. The soldiers stripped him of what little visible property he had on him right there in the chaos. Then they marched the tall, once athletic lawyer out to the freezing winter night toward British headquarters in Perth Amboy. The cold bit hard. No coat, no dignity. Just the humiliating shuffle of a man who had signed his name at the top of a document the Crown now wanted to punish personally. From Perth Amboy, they shipped him to New York City and threw him into the Provost Prison, one of the worst hellholes the British ran during the war. This wasn't gentlemanly house arrest. This was deliberate, targeted brutality aimed at a signer. The Provost was notorious. Over 12,000 American prisoners would eventually die in New York prisons from exposure, disease, neglect, and starvation. Stockton got the full treatment. They clapped him in irons. Food came minimal and spoiled, when it came at all. Winter cold seeped through stone walls with almost no protection. The British made it clear. His name on the declaration made him a special prize. They wanted him broken publicly to send a message to every other man thinking about picking up a pen against the king. Weeks dragged on, 5 to 6 of them in that darkness. Malnutrition brought scurvy. Gums bleeding, teeth loosening, body wasting. The cold never let up. The irons rubbed raw skin. The polished Princeton attorney who once debated in fine courtrooms and hosted elegant dinners at Morven now shivered in chains, reduced to the basic struggle for survival. The empire that once granted him royal appointments now showed exactly what it thought of men who stepped out of line. Congress learned of the treatment and lost its collective mind. They passed a resolution ordering General George Washington to protest the shocking and inhuman treatment straight to General Howe. Pressure mounted. Finally, in mid-January 1777, Stockton was released on parole. The terms were standard on paper. No taking up arms again against the Crown. But accounts differ on exactly what he was forced to sign or say under duress. Quite honestly, they should have prohibited Stockton from taking up pens against the Crown. That might have been more meaningful. Some contemporaries and later historians accused him of a soft recantation or accepting a pardon. Others pointed out that broken men in hellish prisons often took whatever oath kept them breathing. Plenty did on both sides. Here's the reality about breaking a man. Whether it is with conditions, outright torture, or a combination of both. Everybody has their limit. It might take longer with some than others, but the end result will be the same. There is no other way that game ends. Ask anyone who has attended SEER training. Stockton honored the parole by stepping back from active military and congressional roles, though he later reaffirmed loyalty through New Jersey oaths. Because fuck the British. The debate never fully died. It still shadows his legacy among the strictest patriots who never had to endure the provost themselves. Leave it to the bitches who never went outside the wire to throw the most shade. Stockton returned home to a shattered life. British and Loyalist forces had not been gentle with Morven while he suffered. The estate was looted and damaged. His prized library, books collected over decades, was burned, scattered, or carried off. Fine furniture destroyed or stolen. Livestock and grain seized. The damage ran into thousands of pounds sterling. The beautiful home Annis had named after a misty Gaelic mountain, the center of colonial society and poetic inspiration, now stood stripped and violated. Annis and the children, who had endured their own terrified flight and hiding, faced the brutal work of rebuilding, while nursing a husband whose body was broken. Annis Budino Stockton proved her steel again and again. She managed the evacuation, protected the children, kept some semblance of family intact through chaos, and later poured grief and resilient love into her poetry. John Covenhoven watched his own home turned into the scene of a midnight raid. The British were not likely any more tidy than modern law enforcement serving a warrant. That is to say, the place is a wreck afterward. The Loyalist betrayers, neighbors who once broke bread at Morven, showed how personal this civil war could get. The British captors and provost guards enforced the cruelty with professional detachment. Washington, the old friend, received Congress's order to protest on Stockton's behalf and did his best. What could really be expected of one belligerent complaining to another? The 6 children saw their world upended, futures suddenly tied to a damaged estate and a father who would never be the same. The enslaved people at Morven continued their labor amid the ruins, adding another bitter layer to the contradictions Stockton carried. The man who had known bondage as master, now tasting a version of it as prisoner, yet never fully reconciling the system back home. Masonry didn't ride in with trumpets or dramatic rescues. It rarely does. It worked in the quiet steel it had helped forge earlier. As founder and first worshipful master of St. John's Lodge, Stockton had built a network of men who valued discipline, secrecy when needed, and mutual support. That foundation mattered in the aftermath. The chisel cut deepest here, stripping away layers of privilege and physical strength through irons, starvation, and lasting damage. The gavel tried to keep inner order when everything external had been ripped away in the provost's freezing cells. The compasses bounded despair and kept him from total collapse or outright betrayal after release. The plumb tested whether a man could stay upright under deliberate cruelty designed to break signers. The level and trowel showed in the support that came afterward. Family resilience, congressional protest, the slow rebuilding. He lived the obligation not in warm lodge meetings, but in the dark cell, the painful parole choice, and the limping return to a looted Morven. The brutal hit extracted a terrible permanent toll. Stockton's health never recovered. The prison ordeal aggravated everything and planted the seeds for the throat and lip cancer that would eventually kill him. Public judgment from some patriots began immediately. Whispers that the parole showed weakness, yet he had signed first for New Jersey. He had endured targeted hell because of that signature. Few others paid quite so personally. Let it sink in. The eloquent lawyer who once commanded courtrooms and fine tables at Morven was dragged half-dressed into the winter night, chained like an animal, starved until scurvy ate him from inside, and left to wonder if the cause was worth it. His estate burned while his family hid. The man who profited from enslaved labor now felt chains on his own wrists. The working tools didn't prevent the suffering. They gave him the resolve to survive it anyway. In the final episode, we'll follow the broken return, the slow health collapse into painful cancer and death at age 50 in 1781. Annis holding the family and estate together through poetry and sheer will. The lingering debates over his parole. and the final square that somehow endured despite public judgment and an early grave. This has been episode 3 of the Masonic Files on Brother Richard Stockton, the Brutal Hit series. The Brutal Hit. Capture Provost Prison and the heaviest price. Hit subscribe if you can stomach the real cost. Share it with your lodge brothers, your history buffs, or anyone who needs reminding what happens when you actually put your name on the line. I'll catch you in episode 4, the final square. Stay square. Stay savage. Stay Masonic.